I should have known something was wrong the moment the lights dimmed and the curtain pulled back. At first, everything seemed normal. Velvet seats, the buzz of excitement rippling through the crowd, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating beneath my feet. I had boarded expecting laughter, cocktails, music, the kind of cruise where every night ends in applause and cheers. And for the first few evenings, that's exactly what I got. But on that night, when the show began, my stomach sank. The faces on stage weren't strangers in costume or hired performers. They were familiar. Too familiar. I didn't know why at first, but something in me recoiled. Their eyes weren't alive with joy or charisma. They were hollow, almost pleading, as though trapped in a body forced to move and smile against its will. I clapped weakly, trying to convince myself it was just uncanny resemblance, but deep down I recognized them. I had seen their faces before long ago in grainy news clippings about passengers who had vanished at sea. That was the moment everything changed for me. Because once you realize the show isn't meant to entertain, it's meant to keep you. The ship stops feeling like a vacation. When I first stepped onto the ship, I felt like I'd been dropped into a floating city of endless wonder. The air was alive with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Families posed for photos against the endless blue horizon. Honeymooners clutched each other with wide-eyed excitement, and I told myself this was going to be the escape I desperately needed. No work calls, no alarms, just open water and indulgence. The buffets stretched on forever, towers of shrimp and endless trays of desserts, while the bars served drinks so colorful they looked unreal beneath the glow of neon lights. Every night promised something bigger. Shows, games, music that shook the floor. The first evenings lived up to the promise. I watched comedians work the crowd, singers belt out familiar classics, dancers moving with polished precision. It was what you'd expect from a cruise. Safe, simple entertainment to keep us distracted from the void of the ocean outside. But then came the night when something shifted. At first glance, the show seemed the same. Costumes, choreography, the swell of music. Yet when I leaned forward, my breath caught. The performers' faces. There was something deeply wrong about them. Their smiles felt painted on, their movements stiff, almost mechanical. And stranger still, I couldn't shake the sense I'd seen them before. Not on board, not in the bars or dining halls, but somewhere else, somewhere darker. The man in the front row of performers had a face I swore I recognized, though I couldn't place from where. My brain kept searching, fumbling with the fragments of memory, even as the audience around me erupted in laughter and applause like nothing was amiss. Another dancer spun past, her eyes glassy, her lips trembling under the weight of her forced grin, and something deep in my chest twisted with dread. It wasn't just that they looked wrong, it was that they looked familiar. Too familiar. Like photographs I had seen once long ago of people whose stories didn't end with applause. I clapped weakly with the crowd, but my hands shook. Already, a voice in the back of my head whispered, "Something here isn't right." The next night, I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was a cruise show, actors in wigs and makeup, nothing more. Still, when the evening rolled around, I found myself slipping back into the theater, heart pounding as the lights dimmed and the curtain rose. From the very first note, I leaned forward, studying every detail. Every face. The movements were wrong. That was the first thing I noticed. The dancers moved in rhythm, but there was no fluidity, no life in their steps. Their limbs jerked slightly, as if pulled by invisible strings, their choreography perfect yet soulless. And then their eyes. God. Their eyes. They were wide, searching, darting to the audience as if begging for someone, anyone, to help. Each time my gaze locked with one of them, I felt a shiver run down my spine. And then it hit me. The woman in the second row, I knew her. Not personally, but from an old article I'd read years ago about a passenger who vanished from a Caribbean cruise. Her photo had been grainy, black and white, but it was her. Same face, same eyes. Only now those eyes were alive with terror, trapped behind a smile that didn't belong to her. I scanned the others, and recognition trickled in like a poison. A man whose disappearance had sparked frantic searches off the Florida coast. A couple, whose luggage was found but who never returned to shore. They were all here, parading across the stage, their bodies moving like puppets while their faces silently screamed. The audience, though, they didn't react. They clapped, cheered, even whistled, but their expressions were eerily blank, their movements mechanical, as if they were part of the performance themselves. I glanced around, waiting for someone else to look horrified, to frown, to notice. But no one did. It was just me. My chest tightened. I wanted to stand, to shout, but my legs were heavy, glued to the floor. I forced myself to clap along, every smack of my palms echoing like a lie. Deep down, a truth was settling in. I was the only one who saw them for what they really were. And that realization terrified me more than anything. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, those stiff bodies, those desperate eyes, begging silently for release. I needed proof, something tangible to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. So the next morning, while most passengers lounged by the pool, I slipped into the ship's library. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The hum of the engines thrumming faintly beneath the floor. Dusty binders lined the shelves, filled with maritime history, glossy brochures and news clippings laminated for display. I pulled one at random and froze. There it was, a headline from years ago. Passenger disappears without a trace. The photo beneath the title sent a chill down my spine. The face was unmistakable. It was the same man I'd seen on stage last night. I rifled through more, my pulse quickening. One article described a young woman who vanished mid-voyage, her belongings left neatly in her cabin. Another told of an entire couple whose disappearance baffled investigators. Each photo matched a performer I had seen under the stage lights. They hadn't just looked familiar. I had been watching the missing perform, paraded in front of us, as if nothing had happened. Shaking comma. I sought out answers from the crew. At first, they brushed me off with smiles too tight to be genuine. Must have been a coincidence, one said. Another laughed nervously, changing the subject before I could press further. But one man, a steward with hollow eyes, grabbed my arm when no one was looking. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Don't stay for the final show." Before I could ask him what he meant, he let go and hurried down the corridor, vanishing into the maze of passageways. From that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Even in crowds, even with music blaring and glasses clinking, there was always the sense of someone behind me, just out of sight. At night, I swore I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my cabin, stopping the moment I moved toward the door. The ship, once a glittering paradise, now felt like a trap. And with every hour that passed, I knew I was being watched. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I'd avoid the theater and keep my head down until the cruise was over. But curiosity is a poison, and the warning from that steward only made it worse. I needed to know for sure. So when the evening show rolled around, I forced myself into a seat near the back, heart pounding as the lights dimmed and the curtain rose. Instantly, I knew something had changed. The air felt colder, heavier, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. The stage was darker too, shadows clinging to the performers even as the spotlights tried to burn them away. Their movements were stiffer than before, their faces even paler, and the whispers in my head screamed for me to leave. But then one figure stepped forward, and my blood ran cold. It was a man I had seen only yesterday, sunburned and smiling at the pool with a drink in his hand. Now he stood center stage, skin gray, eyes hollow, lips stretching into a grin that didn't belong to him. My stomach twisted with nausea. The realization hit like a wave. The shows weren't just some cursed performance, they were being fed. The living were being taken and transformed into the cast. I shot to my feet, but the crowd didn't react. They clapped in unison, mechanical, their faces blank like mannequins. Not a single person gasped. Not a single eye widened at the sight of a man who should have been lounging poolside now paraded as a puppet on stage. Panic surged. I bolted for the exit, but the hallway beyond didn't feel right. It twisted unnaturally, doubling back on itself no matter how far I ran. Each door I tried was locked, handles ice cold, the walls groaning as though alive. The air was thick, with the scent of salt water, the pounding of waves echoing somewhere beneath the floor. I stumbled, breath ragged, every corridor leading me deeper into the ship's guts. It was no longer a vessel carrying us across the sea. It was something else entirely, something that fed, something that trapped. And I realized with dawning horror that there might not be a way out. I swore I wouldn't return. After the nightmare of that last show, I promised myself I would barricade my cabin door and wait out the rest of the voyage in silence. But when the final night came, something stronger than me dragged me back. My body moved on instinct, feet carrying me through the winding halls until I stood once more at the Grand Theater doors. My hands shook as I pulled them open, and the familiar wave of cold air spilled out, swallowing me whole. The curtain rose. At first I couldn't breathe, because standing beneath the lights weren't strangers, weren't vague figures I could convince myself I didn't know. No, these were people I had laughed with just hours ago. The older couple who had shared wine at my dinner table, the young man who'd cracked jokes by the bar, the woman who'd clinked her glass against mine. In a cheerful toast, now they stood pale and hollow-eyed, smiles frozen, bodies moving in jerks and sways that looked less like dancing and more like marionettes pulled by unseen strings. The applause thundered around me, but I hardly heard it. My eyes were fixed, center stage, where a figure stepped forward. My stomach dropped. It was me. Or at least something wearing my face. Same eyes, same clothes, same nervous smile I'd seen in the mirror only hours ago. It raised a hand in perfect sync with my own, like a reflection that had finally climbed free of the glass dot. The edges of reality began to warp. The stage bled into the audience, rows of seats melting into endless velvet curtains. The clapping. Passengers moved in rhythm with the dancers, their eyes vacant as though they too were part of the act. I tried to stand, to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. The air around me pulsed like a living thing, and I finally understood. This ship wasn't a vessel carrying us across the ocean. It was a cage, a trap disguised as paradise, feeding itself night after night with the living, stealing souls to keep its eternal performance alive. And my turn, my debut, was about to begin. I woke in my cabin with a jolt, heart hammering, the sheets damp against my skin. For a moment I clung to the hope that it had been a nightmare, some feverish hallucination brought on by too much sun and too little sleep. But then I saw it. On the nightstand beside me, folded neatly as if delivered, with care, was the program for tonight's show. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the glossy paper reflecting the dim light. The list of performers stared back at me, each name printed in bold letters, and at the very bottom, my own name waited, undeniable. I dropped it, pulse roaring in my ears, and that's when I heard it. Applause. Soft at first, then swelling, echoing faintly through the walls. It wasn't the muffled chatter of passengers in the hall. It was the rhythmic, mechanical clapping of a full audience, synchronized and relentless, as if demanding my presence. I pressed my hands to my face, shaking, but deep down I already knew. Tomorrow night, when the curtain rises again, my place has already been chosen. I know exactly where I'll be standing. I remember the exact second the lights went out. One moment, the grand halls of the cruise ship shimmered with golden light and laughter. The next, pitch black silence, so sudden it stole the breath from my lungs. And then, out of nowhere, a scream, high-pitched, human. It tore through the darkness like a razor across silk. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. Then the lights snapped back on. Everything looked the same, but 5 people were missing. No one saw them leave. No calls for help, no splashes in the water. They were just gone. We were in the middle of the Pacific. No land for miles. The sea calm. The sky clear. The crew said it was a power surge, a technical hiccup. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And more terrifying than the vanishing was how quickly everyone forgot. Their names, their faces. It was like they'd never been there. Except I remember. I remember everything. People think cruise ships are about luxury and freedom. But I'm here to tell you sometimes they take more than they give. And once the mirage of the sea takes something, it doesn't give it back. The day I boarded the mirage of the sea, the sun was blazing over the Pacific like a spotlight on a stage, and I, along with hundreds of others, stepped onto what looked like floating paradise. Everything about the ship was pristine. The decks gleamed like polished glass. The staff greeted us with almost robotic precision and unsettlingly perfect smiles, and a soft orchestral melody played in the background, as if scripted for a movie. My cabin was spotless, almost too spotless, like it had never been touched by another human. On the bed sat a glossy welcome brochure with elegant gold lettering. But beneath the printed itinerary and poolside drink menus, a single line in thin, italic font stood out like a whisper. No returning once you're seen. I stared at it for a moment, unsure if it was a misprint or some bizarre slogan. Either way, it made my skin crawl. At dinner that night, I met a few people who made the ship feel more alive. Liam and Marissa, a newlywed couple glowing with post-honeymoon bliss, invited me to join them at their table. Then there was Tommy, a pale, quiet boy around 6, with wide, watchful eyes, sitting beside his stern, silent grandmother. Something about the way he gripped her hand like a lifeline made my stomach twist. Still, everything looked normal. The parties were vibrant. The water sparkled. But sometimes, just for a second, the reflections in the mirrors didn't match the people standing in front of them. Once, as I passed the hallway near the spa, I saw a staff member staring at the wall, unmoving, like she'd frozen mid-task. When she noticed me watching, her smile snapped back into place. At night, it was worse. I'd lie in bed, unable to sleep, feeling eyes on me from the vent above, the closet door, the mirror across the room. The air felt too still, like the ship held its breath while we slept. Everyone else seemed enchanted by the luxury. But beneath the polished surface, something was wrong. It was subtle, quiet. But it was there, lurking just beyond the edges of every bright hallway and hollow smile. It happened 3 nights in. A storm rolled in fast, unnaturally fast. One moment the ocean was calm, the next it was a writhing mass of black waves crashing against the hull. Thunder cracked like bones snapping in the sky. Most of us were gathered in the lounge watching the lightning dance through the panoramic windows, sipping cocktails and pretending we weren't nervous. Then, without warning, the lights died. Total blackout. Not even the emergency lights kicked in, just black. The kind of black that makes you forget your own shape. And in that void, 12 seconds stretched into an eternity. No music, no crew, just the groaning of the ship and the quiet sound of someone whispering far too close to my ear. When the lights came back, the storm had calmed, but something was wrong. There were screams, frantic shouting. Liam and Marissa, gone. Their seats, empty, drinks untouched. Their laughter gone like it had never existed. I rushed to the staff, demanding answers. "Who?" the bartender asked with a blank smile. "I don't think we've had any guests by those names." He didn't even blink. I found a woman I'd met the day before, someone who'd chatted with Marissa about her wedding dress. When I brought it up, she tilted her head like I was speaking gibberish. "I think you've had too much to drink," she said softly, eyes avoiding mine. But I knew they had been real. I remembered Marissa's chipped pink nail polish, Liam's stupid pineapple shirt. We had laughed over shrimp cocktails just the night before. In my room, hands trembling, I pulled up the selfie we'd taken at dinner. I stared at the screen, my breath catching. There I was, smiling awkwardly. And beside me? Nothing. Just 2 empty chairs, like they'd never sat there. Like the world had photoshopped them out of existence. I dropped the phone. Suddenly, I wasn't sure what terrified me more, that they were gone, or that no one else wanted to remember they'd ever been here at all. And that whisper during the blackout. It hadn't come from nowhere. Someone, or something, had been there with us in that darkness. and it had taken them. By the next morning, I was losing my grip. I kept waiting for anyone to scream, to panic, to notice the vanishing of Liam and Marissa. But nothing. Deck yoga resumed. Buffets reopened. It was like the world had clicked reset. But then I met Heather. She found me on the observation deck clutching that cursed photo. "You remember them too," she said quietly, without even asking. She introduced me to two others, Raj and Marcus. They'd each lost someone too, a sister, a best friend, all gone in the blackout, all erased from every camera list in mind except ours. Together, we started searching. We didn't trust the elevators anymore. We took the stairs, down, past the crew-only signs, deeper than the deck maps ever showed. The carpet changed, walls peeled with moisture. And then we saw it. An unmarked hallway we knew wasn't there before. The lights buzzed dim and yellow, and at the end, a thick steel door carved with deep scratches, not letters, symbols, primitive, wrong. We didn't open it. Couldn't. That night we met again, whispering in a half-lit corner near the engine room, trying to make sense of what we'd seen. "The ship's shifting," Raj muttered, "like it's growing." And then, darkness. This time it lasted only 6 seconds. But when the lights flickered back, Heather was gone. I turned, breath hitching. "Where's Heather?" I asked, panic rising. "Who?" Raj blinked. "It's just us, man." I stared at them, horrified. Heather had been right beside me. Her voice still echoed in my ears. I shouted her name, but they looked at me like I was unraveling. Just like before. We stumbled into a nearby maintenance room. On the far wall was a dusty CCTV monitor. I wiped it clean and it buzzed to life, flickering between camera feeds. And then we saw it, a black, spindly figure, impossibly tall and thin, dragging something limp down the hallway we'd just been in. No face, no sound, just long limbs pulling Heather's body through a door that wasn't supposed to exist. Raj screamed. Marcus fell silent. And me. I finally understood. The mirage of the sea wasn't just haunted. It was alive. And it was hungry. Stopped sleeping. Stopped eating. I had to know what was happening before it took me to. Marcus and Raj faded, gradually, like mist under sunlight. By the end of the next day, neither remembered Heather or our searches or even me. They still smiled, waved, but their eyes were vacant. Hollow. I found the old records by accident, tucked deep in the cruise library behind a locked glass case, mislabeled as decorative archives. Inside was a brittle leather-bound logbook, half-burnt, water-damaged. The ship's original name wasn't Mirage of the Sea. It was the Virali, decommissioned in 1939 after reports of entire passenger lists vanishing mid-voyage. The names? I scanned them with trembling fingers. Liam Matthews, Marissa Cole, Raj Patel. Passengers from my cruise. Listed in a ledger 86 years old. I confronted a steward, asked why our names were in an old manifest. He stared through me like I'd spoken in tongues. "Perhaps you need rest," he said, smiling thinly. "Sometimes the sea makes people confused." Gaslighting. Perfection in its cruelty. But I wasn't alone. Below Deck 5 I found a locked cabin. Inside, a man sat curled in the corner, mute, with empty eyes and trembling hands. A former crew member by his uniform. He couldn't speak, but he wrote. Page after page in the margins of old menus, towels, anything he could find. His scrawl was wild, barely legible, but the message was always the same. It feeds when unseen. It resets. Don't blink. That night, the power went out again. This time, I didn't run. I hid behind a laundry cart and waited, barely breathing. In the silence, I heard wet sounds, slithering. And then I saw it, crawling down the corridor like a spider dragging its limbs. Not a shadow, but something that refracted light, like a broken mirror floating through space. As it moved, a tear opened, In the hallway wall, shimmering, bending reality like heat above asphalt. One by one, people were pulled in, not screaming, just vanishing. And above us, through the glass ceiling, I saw the stars, but they were wrong. Not constellations, just patterns I'd never seen, blinking slowly like eyes. The mirage of the sea wasn't drifting the ocean anymore. It was drifting somewhere else. I don't remember climbing into the lifeboat. I just remember the cold, the silence, and the unbearable weight of knowing I was the only one left. I drifted for 2 days before a cargo ship found me, delirious and sunburnt, clutching a soaked page and a dead phone. They didn't believe me. No one did. The official report claims Mirage of the Sea completed its voyage without incident. All passengers accounted for. No record of a blackout, no disappearances. Just a confused man found lost at sea. They called it trauma, delusion, stress. But I still have the photo. The one that once showed me with Liam and Marissa. Now it's just me. 3 chairs empty. And the page from the manifest? The ink's faded, but you can still read the last name on the list. Mine. I moved far inland, avoided oceans, tried to start over. But some nights, like tonight, I hear a humming just outside my window, like an engine purring deep underwater. And the lights, they flicker. I'm not crazy. I remember. I survived. But if you ever find yourself on a ship that feels too perfect, check the mirrors. And whatever you do, don't blink. I don't know how long I've been out here anymore. The days blur together, but one thing hasn't changed. That island. Same jagged rocks, same dead trees clinging to the cliffside like charred fingers. Every morning, it's there on the horizon, staring back at us like it's waiting. At first, I thought it was just part of the route, some distant landmark we passed occasionally. But it never faded. It never moved. No matter how far we sailed, it was always there. Like the ship was tethered to it. When I asked the crew about it, they looked at me like I was asking about a ghost. "What island?" one of them said, not even blinking. I pointed straight at it, clear as day, and he just smiled and walked away. I know I sound insane. Maybe I am. But this cruise, this so-called escape, has become a loop, a trap dressed in white linens and endless shrimp cocktails. I don't know what's real anymore, but I know that island is. And I know this ship isn't taking us anywhere. We're sailing in circles. And the worst part? No one else seems to notice. Or maybe they already have. And it's too late for them. When I first stepped onto the ship, I actually smiled, like, really smiled, for the first time in months. I needed this. After everything that had gone wrong last year, my breakup, the layoff, the death in the family, I thought a solo cruise would be the reset button my life so desperately needed. And at first, it was perfect. The ocean was calm, the sunsets were cinematic, and the food, endless and indulgent. It felt like a dream too good to question. Everyone was so damn friendly. Passengers chatted like old friends. The staff catered to every whim, and the entertainment was nonstop. Live music, pool parties, fancy dinners under string lights. It was the kind of joy that felt curated, but I didn't care. I drank it but by day 3 I noticed the island small, jagged, covered in black rock with a single crooked tree near its peak. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe we were sailing a loop around a region. But when I saw it again on day 4 and again on day 5, always in the same position on the horizon, always watching, I started to feel it in my chest. That creeping wrongness. I asked a bartender where we were docked next. He smiled, but his answer didn't match the ship's printed itinerary. Then I checked the digital map on the wall outside my cabin, and it was blank, just blue. No dots, no route, no land masses. Nothing. That night, during karaoke, a man I hadn't seen before sat beside me, his eyes glassy, mouth curled into a lazy grin. "We never left the loop," he said, his voice dreamy, far away. I laughed awkwardly, thinking he was drunk. But then he just stared forward. Still. Silent. I touched his shoulder and he flinched like I'd shocked him. He stood and walked away without another word. After that, I started watching the others more closely. Some smiled too much, some barely blinked, and all of them, somehow, acted like time didn't matter anymore. Maybe it didn't. Maybe this ship, wasn't about relaxation. Maybe it was about forgetting. And something deep inside me whispered, don't get too comfortable. I started taking photos of the island each morning. Same rock formations, same slumped tree, same soft light breaking. Behind it like a tired sunrise. I compared timestamps, angles, shadows. Everything matched. We weren't circling a region, we were stuck in a loop, a perfect, seamless circle. I took my evidence to the captain. I waited outside the restricted bridge for nearly an hour before he appeared, polished and pleasant like he'd stepped out of a brochure. I showed him the photos, tried to explain. He looked at me, then smiled and said, "You're not the first to notice." Just like that. No shock, no concern, just resignation. Then he walked past me and disappeared behind a steel door that sealed shut with a mechanical hiss. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the room, checked the door 3 times, locked it twice. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps directly above me, but I was on the top deck. There was no floor above. The sound was deliberate, slow, heavy pacing, then sudden stillness. Like someone was listening. The next day, I met a man named Harris sitting alone at the back of the observation lounge. He was shaking, knuckles white around a half-empty glass. I asked if he was okay. He didn't answer right away. Then, in a hoarse whisper, he said, "This ship doesn't dock anymore." I leaned in. "Why not?" He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Because there's nowhere left to dock. They vanished, like everything else." Before I could respond, he stood and left, vanishing into the crowd like a ghost. I ran back to my cabin and tried everything. The ship's Wi-Fi was temporarily unavailable. My satellite phone wouldn't connect. No signal, no emergency channels, just silence. I started writing everything down. Notes, dates, names. But even those started to feel slippery in my mind, like sand slipping through my fingers. One day melted into the next. The crew kept smiling. The passengers kept laughing. The same song played every afternoon by the pool. And every night the island came back. Whatever this was, it wasn't a glitch in the itinerary. It was a prison. And we were never meant to leave. I woke up to silence, not the usual hum of music from the pool deck or footsteps in the hallway. Just nothing. When I stepped out of my cabin, the air felt heavier, like something had shifted. I went to find Harris. Gone, his cabin empty, no luggage, no signs he'd ever been there. The nameplate outside his door just read vacant. I checked with the front desk, asked if Harris Everly was still on board. The woman behind the counter tilted her head, confused. "We don't have a passenger by that name," she said, her smile fixed in place. "Are you sure you're not misremembering?" I asked about 2 other passengers I'd spoken to at dinner just the night before. Same response. Their rooms were unoccupied. Their names weren't on the registry. I started asking other passengers. Most just blinked at me, polite but distant. One woman laughed and said, "Oh, people come and go all the time." That night, a dense fog rolled in, thick enough to swallow the entire horizon. I stood on the deck trying to see through it when something brushed the side of the ship. Not waves, not wind, something solid, slow, heavy. It made the whole vessel groan. Panic creeping in, I slipped into the galley through the service hallway, hoping to find a quiet place to think. That's when I saw it, wedged behind an old freezer, a water-damaged logbook with the ship's original name, the Odessa. The last official entry was dated 5 years ago. Declared lost at sea. All communications ceased, presumed gone. Flipped through the pages, heart pounding, until I found a printed passenger manifest, names I recognized. mine included. But the date next to my name was from 2 years ago, and I hadn't aged a day. It didn't make sense. I couldn't remember more than a week on board, a few days of sunbathing and poolside cocktails. How could that equal years? Unless time didn't work here. Unless we weren't just lost at sea. I felt it then, deep in my bones. This wasn't a cruise anymore. It was a limbo. And the ship wasn't letting anyone leave. I became obsessed with the island. Every morning I stood at the railing with binoculars, tracking every detail, every stone, every shadow. At first it looked deserted, but then I saw them. Shapes, moving between the trees. Not animals, not people, just wrong. The way they moved, fast but jerky, like marionettes with broken strings. Each time we circled back, the shapes were closer to the shore. They'd stand there still, just watching. I counted 7 at first, then 9, then 12. No one else seemed to notice, or worse, they pretended not to. In the water. God, the water stopped moving. It was flat like glass, no ripples, no waves, not even when the wind picked up. The ship wasn't slicing through it anymore. It was floating, motionless. One night the engine cut off completely. I didn't even hear the usual creaks and groans. Just silence. I ran to the top deck and there it was, the island closer than ever. Close enough to see that the shapes were no longer standing on land. They were in the water now. That's when I saw a woman sprint across the deck and throw herself overboard screaming, "I'd rather drown than be seen." Her splash echoed, like a gunshot, and then nothing. I leaned over the railing, breath caught in my throat, and the surface of the sea changed. I saw them, dozens, maybe hundreds of pale, bloated faces just beneath the waterline, all turned upward, watching, expressionless, as if waiting. I stumbled back in horror and ran through the halls looking for help. But the crew, they weren't right. They repeated things word for word like broken recordings. "Please enjoy your stay aboard the Mirage." Over and over. No blinking. No emotion. One crewman dropped a tray, and when I looked closer I saw blood smeared across his hands. But he didn't seem to notice. Just bent down, picked it up and said, "Please enjoy your stay aboard the Mirage." It hit me then. This ship wasn't just sailing in circles. It was part of something else, something ancient. It didn't want us to dock because it wasn't meant to. We weren't passengers anymore. We were offerings. I snapped. Somewhere between the silence, the faces in the water, and the crew's hollow smiles, something in me cracked wide open. I found an unlocked lifeboat near the loading bay, dropped it without a sound, and paddled toward the island. My arms burned with every stroke, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Yet no matter how far I rowed, the ship stayed the same distance behind me, like it was tethered to me, like it was watching. The island loomed ahead, but it wasn't right. It shifted as I approached. Rocks moved. Trees changed shape. At one point it looked like a jagged skull, then something worse, something that breathed. The closer I got, the more it twisted, reshaping itself like it knew I was watching. I don't remember capsizing. I just remember the cold, black water and a chorus of whispers beneath the surface. Then, nothing. I woke up in my cabin, dry, dressed, the bed made. Outside, passengers laughed by the pool. The morning announcements chirped cheerfully. "Welcome aboard. Today is day 1 of your luxury voyage." The same music played, same buffet, same smiles. But through my porthole, I see it, waiting on the horizon. That same island, still watching. It started with the knocking. 3 slow, deliberate bangs against the hull, loud enough to vibrate through the floor and into my bones. I was lying in bed, somewhere in the middle of the Pacific, too far from any land, too deep in the dark, to feel anything but small. I froze. My first thought was a storm, maybe a drifting container. But the water had been calm all day, glassy and still. And the sound wasn't random. It was a pattern, like someone was out there. I jumped up, pressed my ear to the wall, silence, then another knock. Closer this time. Not from inside, from outside, from below. When I called the front desk, the crew acted like nothing happened. Probably just thermal expansion, they said. Perfectly normal. But I could hear something in his voice. Tight. Rehearsed. Like he'd said it before. That was the first moment I realized we weren't alone on that ship. We were too far out for help. Too isolated to leave. And something beneath us, in the water, had noticed. The captain told us we were safe. He said it again and again. But after the knocking started, he stopped looking anyone in the eye. I boarded the cruise to escape. No calls, no clients, no pressure, just open sea and silence. That was the plan. And for the first few days it delivered. Calm waters, endless food, smiling passengers. The crew moved like clockwork, cheerful but always busy. I remember thinking how rare it felt to truly relax. No responsibilities, just sunlight and waves. But then little things started to feel off. The first was the birds, flocks of them, black and erratic, circling above the ship one morning. Too many, too far from any coastline. They hovered for hours, screeching, dipping low, before vanishing into the clouds. The crew said nothing. Then the sonar went out. We were told it was a brief calibration issue, though I wasn't sure why a luxury cruise needed active sonar in the first place. A few of the older passengers laughed it off. I didn't, especially when a thick, unnatural fog crept in later. That afternoon, despite the forecast being clear. By day 5, the engine stopped. No announcement, no warning, just a quiet hum turning into silence. We floated aimlessly for nearly 3 hours. No one explained it. When I asked a crew member, he stiffened and said it was just a pause for recalibration. I pressed him, and that's when his smile faded. He leaned in, eyes darting around like someone might be listening. "We only drift this far out," he whispered. "When something wants us quiet." That sentence lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. Later that night, during dinner, I noticed the captain at a corner table quietly speaking with senior officers. They looked tense, nervous in a way that didn't match the easy piano music playing behind them. When he finally addressed the passengers the next morning, his voice was calm, but his eyes said something else. "Nothing to worry about," he assured us over the intercom. "We're in complete control." But the ship still wasn't moving. And the silence out on the deck, it wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt heavy, like something beneath us was listening, waiting. I came aboard for silence. But this was the wrong kind. The first knock came around 3 a.m., sharp, metallic, and deep. It echoed through the floor like a pulse, waking me from a shallow sleep. I sat up, heart pounding, waiting for another sound, and then it came again. Louder, measured, like someone tapping the hull with a giant, deliberate finger. I wasn't the only one who heard it. The next morning, a few passengers gathered at breakfast, murmuring about strange vibrations in the night. But by then the captain had already made an announcement, calm and dismissive. Just thermal expansion, completely normal. That was becoming his favorite phrase, and I was starting to hate it. Later that day, a child went missing. Her name was Sophie. I'd seen her building a puzzle in the lounge the night before. Her parents were frantic, asking everyone, knocking on cabin doors. Security searched for hours. Then the announcement came. She must have gone overboard. But no alarm had sounded, no splash, no explanation. The fog returned the next night, thicker this time. I saw a woman walk into it on the upper deck. She never came back. That same night, I heard someone sobbing behind a maintenance door. I pried it open and found an older man, one I'd seen at trivia night just days before, curled into himself, in the corner of a storage closet. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and his lips moved like they were reciting something. "It's below us," he whispered. "It's listening." I backed away slowly and shut the door. Sleep became impossible. After that, when I did manage to doze off, I'd jolt awake from nightmares, visions of people clawing at the floor beneath my cabin, whispering in tongues I didn't recognize. Voices rose from the drain in the shower. Fingers drummed behind the walls. I checked the floor once, half expecting to find it breathing. The knocks returned, not once, not twice, but in patterns, rhythms, almost like a code. Closer, louder. Every time I held my breath, hoping they'd stop. The captain stopped making announcements. More people vanished. And the worst part was, no one seemed shocked anymore. Like they knew it was going to happen. The ship began to change. It was gradual at first. Hallways that seemed longer than they had the day before. Stairwells that looped strangely. And doors that hadn't been there yesterday now lining corridors like misplaced teeth. I'd memorized the ship's layout during the first few days, but now it felt like the place was shifting beneath my feet. One night, while searching for answers, I found a service stairwell tucked behind a linen closet. It wasn't on the map. It spiraled downward past deck 1, then 0, then further. I followed it, the air growing colder and damper with each step, until I reached a rusted metal hatch. No number, no markings. Just a thin trail of water leaking from the bottom. Inside, it was dark and stale, filled with long-abandoned equipment, analog consoles, flickering monitors, and stacks of handwritten logs rotting with mildew. The walls were covered in carvings, not words, symbols. Some looked like ears, some like waves, some like screaming mouths. Others looked like ritual diagrams. Beneath one, scrawled in red ink, offerings, sounds, blood. I found a crew journal buried in a drawer, pages soaked but legible. The final entries were frantic. "We strayed too far. The listener is awake." As I turned to leave, I found the captain standing behind me. He didn't look surprised, just tired. Hollow. "We were rerouted," he said quietly. "Orders came from the top. Scientific research, they told us. Unmapped territory. We crossed a threshold we weren't supposed to." I asked him what they found. His voice cracked. "Not land, not wreckage. Something old, something waiting. It heard us coming. Now we can't sail back. It won't let us." I followed him back up to the deck. The ship groaned under our feet like it was straining against something invisible. He looked out at the horizon, fists clenched. "We opened a door," he said, "and now it's inside. Listening." I looked back down the stairwell behind us, to the hatch that led into the deep. I realized then, whatever was beneath us wasn't just watching from the water. It was already aboard. And we'd brought it with us. The knocks became rhythmic. Not random bangs anymore, but sequences, like syllables in some ancient language we weren't meant to understand. A slow beat against the hull, followed by silence, then faster, louder, closer. It started happening at the same time each night, as if it was keeping a schedule, listening, communicating. By then, panic had taken root. Passengers huddled in corners, whispering prayers, avoiding windows. A few tried to jump overboard. I watched one man climb the railing and vanish into the fog without a word. No splash, no scream, just gone. The crew said nothing. They only watched, expressionless, like they knew it was inevitable. That night, the knocking stopped. For a moment, I thought maybe it was over. But then the hull shuddered violently, and a deep, booming sound rang out, like metal folding inward. I ran to the main corridor and saw it with my own eyes. A dent, massive and breathing slowly, pulsing as if something was pressing against it from the outside. Doors across the ship began to creak open on their own. Lights flickered, then died, completely. The sea went still. Not calm, dead. No waves, no wind, just black, endless water, and the sound of something rising. I climbed to the top deck, and there it was, a shape, towering, formless, almost fluid in how it moved. I couldn't see details, only outlines, shifting like oil in water. But I felt it. It looked straight through me. The captain stood near the railing, unmoving. Then, without a word, he stepped forward and vanished into the darkness. Behind me, some of the crew began murmuring, not in English, not in anything I recognized. Their mouths moved in unison, eyes glazed. One of them turned to me, still chanting, and smiled. It wasn't human. Not anymore. It dawned on me. We weren't being haunted. We weren't even being hunted. We were being absorbed. The knocking was never a warning. It was a request, a signal, a demand to be let in. And we did. Somewhere between the reroute and the silence, we answered. And now, the ship didn't belong to us anymore. I'm recording this from a sealed pantry in the galley. I don't know how long the power will last or if anyone will ever find this. Everyone's gone, or changed. I can't tell the difference anymore. The knocking hasn't stopped. It's right outside now, heavy and slow, echoing through the walls like it knows I'm the last one left. I don't think it ever wanted to sink the ship. That was never the plan. It wanted inside, to fuse with us, to become part of what we are. Steel, routine, flesh, memory. The ship was just a vessel in more ways than one. I think we answered it when we drifted too far, when we stopped asking questions. When we listened. The crew, they speak in clicks now, rhythms. They don't blink. The passengers who didn't vanish, they just stopped being people. It's quieter now, too quiet, except for the knock. It's louder, slower, right behind the wall. I can feel it in my teeth. We let it in. God help us. We let it in. If you're hearing this, if you're ever at sea and you hear knocking on the hull, don't answer. It was maybe 50 feet off the starboard side, bobbing gently with the swell. Same hair, same clothes, same expression I'd seen in the mirror that morning. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles ached, trying to make sense of it. Convinced I was hallucinating or dreaming or finally losing my mind, but it didn't vanish. It just floated there, watching me. I ran for help. Dragged a crew member back to the same spot. Pointed, shaking. But the water was empty now, calm and blank like nothing had ever been there. The crewman gave me a look that was a little too calm and a little too practiced. Sometimes the ocean plays tricks, he said. Maybe it was driftwood. But driftwood doesn't have my face. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't stop picturing those eyes staring up at me. It wasn't a dream. I know what I saw. And the next morning, everything felt different. Off. The passengers smiled too much. The crew avoided eye contact. Something had changed. And from that moment on, I couldn't stop wondering if I was still me, or if that thing in the water had already climbed aboard. I boarded the ship because I needed a reset. No job, no family drama, just me, the ocean, and silence. I told myself this would be the break I'd been waiting for, a clean slate. And for the first couple of days it actually felt like one. The food was good, the weather perfect, and the staff overly polite in that way only cruise staff can be. I spent hours just sitting by the railing watching the horizon blur into itself. But things started to feel strange. It began small. A woman at breakfast told a joke about her husband losing his glasses in the pool. I laughed. Later that day I overheard the exact same joke, word for word, told by a completely different person. And then again the next morning, from someone else. The crew too seemed copy-pasted. Different names, same voices, same phrases. Another beautiful day at sea, said 3 different servers in the same exact tone. Then there was the man. Tall, pale, red windbreaker. He appeared everywhere. Pool deck, buffet, stairwell. Always just far enough not to confront, but close enough to notice. When I finally stopped him and asked if we'd met, he looked genuinely confused. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. That night I sat alone near the rear deck bar, trying to shake the crawling feeling under. My skin. That's when an older woman sat beside me. I hadn't seen her before. Her hands trembled as she sipped her drink. Without looking at me, she said, "Don't trust your reflection out here." I blinked. What? She finally turned, eyes glassy and tired. Sometimes it watches back, and sometimes it doesn't let go. I waited for her to elaborate, but she stood and walked away, vanishing into the crowd like she was never there. When I got back to my room, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I meant to. I watched myself, my face, my eyes. And for just a second, only a second, my reflection didn't move. It just stared back. Everything on this ship looked right, but none of it felt right. And I wasn't sure I was still alone in my own skin. It happened again, only this time on camera. I was in the library, flipping through old photo books of past cruise guests, when one of the wall monitors flickered. From the usual entertainment schedule to a live feed, it showed the lower deck completely empty, or so I thought. Then someone walked into frame. Same height, same build, same hoodie I was wearing. I froze. They turned toward the camera. It was me. Not just similar me. I rushed to the deck, heart in my throat, but by the time I got there, it was empty. No one in sight. The door at the end of the corridor was sealed shut. Since then, everything started unraveling. I've woken up in clothes I don't remember putting on, in hallways I don't remember walking into. One morning I had a bruise. On my shoulder, a deep yellow-purple ring I swear wasn't there the night before. And people keep acting like they know me, but differently. A man at breakfast thanked me for helping him find his lost phone. I hadn't. A woman smiled at me warmly and said, "No hard feelings about last night." I didn't even know her name. It got worse when I snuck into the service corridor, searching for anything that might explain the hallucinations. I found a clipboard in the staff lounge, passenger logs printed and clipped in plastic sleeves. My name was on it. Twice. Same name. Same cabin. Slightly different birth dates. One digit off. When I brought it to the front desk, the woman behind the counter looked through it calmly and said, "That must be a clerical error. Happens sometimes." Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "There's only one of you, sir." But she said it too quickly, like she'd practiced the line. Before that night, I sat in my room, lights off, mirror uncovered. I stared at my reflection, willing it to move before I did. But it didn't, until it smiled. I didn't. I know how crazy this sounds, but either I'm losing my mind, or something else is wearing my face. I finally saw it. Me. Not through a screen. Not in a reflection. Face to face. It was in the lower deck corridor near the crew bunks, past a no-entry door that had somehow swung open. The lighting flickered, humming above as I turned the corner, and there it was, standing calmly, wearing the exact outfit I had on. Same scars, same tired eyes. But there was something wrong with the smile. It was too relaxed, too knowing. I whispered, "Who are you?" It tilted its head. "You already know," it said softly. "You were supposed to go peacefully. The ocean was kind to you." My mouth went dry. "I'm not dead." A beat passed, then it leaned in slightly. "A version of you already drowned. Maybe it was a dream. Or maybe it was when you looked overboard. Some part of you fell in, and something else climbed out." I ran. The crew wouldn't look at me anymore. They answered questions with rehearsed lines, tight smiles. Except for one steward, an older man with shaking hands. He found me alone by the elevator. "This isn't new," he said, barely above. A whisper. "Sometimes the sea keeps a copy." Before I could press him, he backed away and disappeared behind a staff-only door. Reality started bending after that. Corridors I'd walked 100 times now ended in blank walls. The dining room had 2 entrances, until it didn't. People passed me and greeted me twice. Once like a stranger, once like an old friend. In the mirror, My reflection didn't always match me. I'd lift my hand and it would hesitate, just a breath too long. Once I turned away and caught it still staring at me out of the corner of my eye. Sleep became impossible. The ship no longer felt like a place. It felt like a loop, like I was walking circles inside something alive. I'm not sure I'm the real one anymore. If something took my place, or if I'm what was left behind. And the worst part is, I'm starting to forget which version I used to be. If there ever was only one of me. I tried to leave. I packed what little I had and went straight for the lifeboats, only to find them locked down behind steel gates. The emergency launch panels were dark, unresponsive. I banged on the controls until my fists bled, screaming for someone, anyone, to help. No one came. Back on the main deck, I watched the passengers laugh and dance beneath string lights. And then I saw them. Me. Sitting at my usual spot at the bar, chatting with the same bartender I'd talked to every night since we left port. Only, it wasn't me anymore. It was him. Same eyes, same voice, same casual hand gestures. The bartender didn't blink. I stormed over, grabbed him by the shoulder, spun him around, and saw myself smiling back. Calm, unbothered. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. Before I could respond, others started looking. Not at him, at me, with confusion, discomfort. As if I was the intruder. I backed away, my head pounding, visions flashing, faces merging, corridors twisting, water rushing past my ears. I saw myself kissing someone I'd never met, laughing in conversations I didn't remember. The double had slid into my life so seamlessly I started wondering if maybe he had always been there. And I was the glitch. That night, I stood at the edge of the railing, staring down into the black water. I should have been terrified, but all I felt was peace. Something beneath the surface called to me, not with sound, but with memory, like it already knew me, like it had been waiting. I heard footsteps behind me, felt eyes, a breath on my neck. Then silence. And I let go. The moment I hit the water. It wasn't cold. It was welcoming. Warm even. Like sliding into myself, like a final puzzle piece clicking into place. I sank fast, deeper than seemed possible, as if gravity had made a special rule just for me. In the distance, I saw shapes, shadows that mirrored my own body, floating just out of reach. I wasn't afraid. Because somewhere above me, I was already back on board. Smiling, waving, living my life. I woke up in my cabin, tucked neatly beneath crisp white sheets. Sunlight streamed through the porthole. Soft music played in the hallway. Everything was exactly as it had been on day one. Except it wasn't. Passengers smiled as I passed them, offering familiar nods and greetings. The bartender slid me my usual drink before I even asked. The crew addressed me by name, cheerful and precise. It all felt rehearsed, perfect. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't move, not right away. There was a half-second delay, a lag like bad video playback. I tilted my head. The reflection caught up, eventually. And late at night, when everything goes quiet, I hear it, dripping, breathing, a faint pressure in my chest like lungs filling with seawater. The floorboards creak beneath my bed, and sometimes I swear. I hear someone whispering my name. I try to ignore it, play the part, smile when they smile, laugh when they laugh. But I'm not sure if I ever really left that ocean. I don't know if I'm the one who climbed back aboard, or the one that never made it out. All I know is this: every mirror lies eventually. And some versions of you aren't meant to come back.